Inside this room, all of my dreams become realities, and some of my realities become dreams.
What in the wide, wide world of sports is going on here? Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
You are listening to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute. Here are your hosts, Alan Sanders and Walt Murray.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another edition of the Wilder Ride Listeners Lounge. Now, this is not our typical show where we do a movie 1 minute at a time. This is our sidecast where we get a chance to sit down and chat with somebody and learn about their life 1 moment at a time. I'm your host, I'm Alan Sanders.
I am your co-host, Walt Murray.
And Walt, you and I get a chance to chat for a second, warm up the audience, get them all ready for our guest, and find out what's been going on in the last week or so. You and I actually took a week off from our podcast because we just celebrated 245 years of American independence.
Yeah, that was a great holiday. 4th of July has always been one of my favorites, and I used to run the Peachtree Road Race every year, but since I blew my ankle out, I'm not really able to do that anymore. But yeah, we had a good time. My brother and his wife just moved to Lake Jackson, so we were able to head down there and ride around on their boat a little bit and do a lot of nothing other than eating and enjoying the holiday. So
now I don't know how fireworks were wherever you went, but I know here in my hometown, they had the city council had decided they had spent or allocated funds last year for a fireworks display that never happened. What they decided to do with the reopening of everything, they said, you know what? We're going to allocate the same amount this year that we did last year, and we're just going to go all out. We're just going to go to the wall, welcoming everybody back to normal.
That's awesome. Yeah, where I live, which is Woodstock, it used to be a small town. It is not anymore. But there are probably 4 big fireworks stores, and they were basically sold out. So my neighborhood sounded like D-Day. It was explosions, probably some shotgun fire in the middle of all that.
Says a lot about our country that we celebrate by trying to blow everybody up.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Well, my favorite meme was the one that said, today, July 3rd, is the last day someone will have 10 fingers.
All 10 fingers, yes. I think my wife shared that a few years back, and it showed up as a memory, and she said, I'm going to forward this again and just share it, because it probably will apply to someone.
Yes, it will.
And for those of you in the audience who you did lose your finger, we're not making light of you, but yes, we are.
Yeah, we are. We are.
You deserved it, and you know it. So you probably start off with, hey, everybody, watch this.
Well, I'm kind of the king of that. So
you are.
I'm glad to make fun of someone else for a change. But I have actually had fireworks go off in my hand before, and it is not fun.
No, me too. I think we were talking about that as our do's and don'ts on the morning show that I do. I said I had an entire pack of jumping jacks, which are a hot burning, it looks like a firecracker, but they spin and they kind of turn 3 or 4 different colors and they make a loud noise. Well, I had them all go off in my hand because I was trying to light whole packs and throwing them up in the air, and I mistimed it with a really fast fuse. I had burns all the way down the palm of my hand, and they had like little, it looked like you could see where all the fuses went left and right because it had all these burn marks that went left and right, and then it turned into a 2nd degree, just a swollen blister with water, and it was the most painful thing I remember going through, and I said, I will never ever do that again. Brutal. Thankfully, I didn't lose my hand and I don't have any scarring, but it was a bonehead move because I was, 12 or 13 and thought I knew how to do everything.
Yes. I was going to say, we knew everything. We used to take those and drop them in 2-liter bottles of Coke. The Coke was gone, but you had to hold them until the very last instant before they lit up, or else the oxygen would burn out in the bottle too fast and they'd just dud out on you. So there were plenty of times I came really close to having problems with those things.
I mean, and I also remember being little, we had the lightest possible bottle rocket firecrackers. They didn't even whistle. They weren't even whistling bottle rockets. They were just like, you hear them go, and then, and that was it.
Oh, yeah.
So we used to shoot those at each other across the field from one another. So,
Right. I was going to say, those are the ones that you used in firework combat.
Right. Exactly. We were like pretending we were in some Robotech cartoon because they would go and fly on all different directions and you never had any control over them.
Yeah, we ended up one year. I have no idea where my dad got these, but FBI agents are resourceful, but they were probably the closest thing to professional fireworks you could get. So my dad and his buddies shot them off and, in front of the house for for an hour. And a couple of days later, we found the leftovers. And so while my parents were at work, we were shooting those at each other down the street in the middle of the day. Yeah, it really is a miracle that we survived childhood.
How did we, as Gen Xers, ever get out of the late 70s through the 80s with everything still intact? I'm amazed.
It is absolutely amazing. I mean, me and my brother and a buddy of ours lit our yard on fire by accident, shooting off fireworks. That may have been the day I almost died because Mom almost killed me. She pulled up just as the fire truck was pulling away. And I just remember seeing her grip on the steering wheel and thinking, well, I think we've just gone past the mark. And she got out and if you can imagine the scene, the whole yard is just smoldering. I mean, there's like smoke,
a haze hanging over your house.
Yes. And all the neighbors are out, there's fireworks paper everywhere. And she gets out of the car and looks at us and just goes, I'm leaving this one to your dad. And just walks in the house.
That's like worse.
Yeah. I was like, I think I may have seen the inside of that house for the last time.
Our dad's very similar stories. My dad, ex-Army. And my mom was always the one that would come to our rescue if she thought he might be using a little too much corporal punishment on our behinds, me and my brother. And I'm not saying we didn't deserve it, because we certainly earned those instances. But I'll never forget the time my mom said, you know what, Jerry? You just go in there and you just do what you got to do. And my brother and I looked at each other like,
yeah, that was
we're really in trouble now.
One of probably 2 or 3 times when Mom was like, I don't even care anymore. I give up. Whatever has to happen has to happen.
I mean, I'm telling you, it's one of those memories. My brother and I just looked at each other, and you know how like when you're scared and you're a little kid, you'll just start crying. It doesn't help. There was no mercy. There's no pity. It was like he was told, ooh, go down there and beat the children. Okay. It's like a Bill Cosby routine or something. Oh, I've got permission. I get to go beat the children.
Well, that's similar to the night that one of us, I will not say which one of the 3 of us, but it was my brother, got arrested. And my dad goes down to pick him up. And he's walking in and he's thinking, there's no way I know anybody working right now at the Marietta City Jail. And he walks in and the captain at the desk is like, oh, hey, George, what's going on? Is there a bank robbery tonight? He's like, nah, picking up the Murray kid.
No, I'm picking up my son.
Yeah, he's like, oh, great. You want us to hose him down real good before we give him back?
I am so glad I was never the son of a preacher or a cop, because I can't even imagine, because every kid does something stupid, but when you're the preacher's kid or the cop's kid, there's that extra level of scrutiny, and you just feel, I'm just happy I'm not one either, because I would have been embarrassed having to go pick up my kids somewhere.
At some point, somebody's going to do a podcast on FBI agents' kids and start hauling us in for interviews. And the stories will be horrifying. I mean, I don't know, chicken or the egg, but FBI agents' kids tend to be a real mess. I mean, we have this thing of kind of like the rules may or may not apply to us.
Well, it's like the preacher's kid who wants to try to get away with everything, and the cop's kid. It's the same thing. You're trying to get away with it because you just feel like, well, you know what? I got to deal with this at home. I'm just going to rebel in the outer world. So, well,
my brother's best friend growing up was our pastor's son. So, you can imagine the trouble.
No wonder you lit the yard on fire.
Yeah, we had our moments.
Oh my goodness. Well, we did have a good 4th here. We had great time with friends. I remember I talked about this on the air. It was 1 year ago, obviously, where everybody was told, don't get together. If you do, stay 6 feet apart. And I remember our evening in 2020, everybody was in groups, like all along the driveway, like we were distant friends, barely talking. And by the end of the night, we were all like, this is dumb. We're all friends. We all hang out. We all got together, and there were no fireworks except for whatever we had, but it was still fun. But it was so much nicer this year to be 100% back to normal. And I hope everybody that's listening, wherever you are, if you're not quite to that 100%, I hope you're getting there. I hope everyone's doing what they have to get there. It feels great to feel everything open, everything back to normal, at least where I am. What about you, Walt?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We're the area that I'm in barely closed down. Cherokee County was like, we don't really know about this. So we were shut down a very minimum amount of time. Now, I have noticed basically nobody's wearing masks anymore.
No, same thing here. Up in Northwest Georgia. But we're also out in the country more, and it's a lot wider and further apart. But, downtown, people have been really, since really the spring, getting out and enjoying our farmers market in town, getting out, going to ball games, getting out and supporting the spring sports, and really, and then when the Braves opened up fully, people are back into baseball. You were watching the Stanley Cup. That was still kind of recovering from late last season. I'm looking forward to high school football. Think about this. We are a month away from high school football returning.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
And that is really crazy. This year, we say this every year, that it's just flying by, but this year,
last year didn't. That's what makes me feel like this year's back to normal, because it is cruising again.
Yeah,
so
it is. It's great.
All right. Well, you and I have been chit-chatting enough. We've got a guest who's been waiting in our green room, and I want to, we talk about, things being fair weather and getting back to normal. And if there's anybody who knows about weather and being able to talk about weather and having a background, plus news and broadcast and television and all things along those lines on your nightly news or weekend news or afternoon news, we've got someone who I've really, really wanted to bring onto the show, someone who was amazing when I would bring groups of kids with Youth Leadership Bartow through our Chamber of Commerce, would spend time talking to these kids about her career. Let us welcome to the stage a now retired but a lifelong meteorologist, reporter, and a wonderful woman extraordinaire, Karen Minton. Welcome to the Wilder Ride.
Yay!
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
So glad you were able to join us here. I know you've been enjoying retirement for a couple of years, but you had been a staple in at least Atlanta since I was here, and you actually started a career that went all over the United States. So we're going to give a chance for our audience to learn a little bit more about you. But first and foremost, you heard us talking about the Independence Day celebration. Did you have a good Independence Day?
I actually had a quiet Independence Day. I was home. I didn't go out or really do anything this year. My oldest daughter lives in Las Vegas, so she was out there. My youngest daughter lives here, but she actually went to Florida with her boyfriend, and they were helping some friends with a new restaurant down there. And then my mom and dad, they live in a senior living center, and dad's been in the hospital and in nursing care rehab. So I basically was dealing with a lot of those issues. So I just kind of took time to chill on the 4th of July and use my independence earned from this country's great fighting over the years to enjoy my solitude.
Now, did you have a lot of people in your subdivision or where you live? Did you hear the fireworks this year as opposed to last year?
I heard them everywhere. I saw nothing. So they may have just been outside of the neighborhood, but it was really quite loud. But I have to take my hat off to them. They stopped at midnight.
Well, it was what you're supposed to, right?
Yes, but they haven't always done that over the years. They stopped at midnight. But everybody was very. My neighborhood is nice. We know most of each other. They're very friendly, and so it's just kind of nice to be peaceful and relax.
Excellent. Well, folks that are listeners, longtime listeners to the show, maybe we've got some first-time listeners. We always try when we bring a guest on for the first time, we sort of get in our stainless steel DeLorean. We set the flux capacitor back to the beginning. So, Karen, let's talk about, you've been involved in news, but specifically weather for as long as I've known you. How far back did you decide I'm going to have a career in broadcast journalism with maybe then emphasis in weather?
It was 1980, and I was working for International Dairy Queen. I have a bachelor's degree from University of the Pacific in biological sciences. Didn't know what I was going to do when I decided not to go to dental school. So I ended up working for International Dairy Queen, And I had an opportunity to meet the bureau chief for KCRA, which is a TV station in Sacramento, and his bureau was in Stockton. And he asked me, so what are you doing working for Dairy Queen? And I said, well, it pays the bills. It was my first job out of college. And he said, come out on a story with me. So I went on a story with him and his photographer. Back in the day, he's in the van typing out his story on a manual typewriter, which nobody listening to the show probably even knows what that is anymore. But that's what he did. So he had me read the story. I'm in the van and he had me read the story. And he says, just pretend you're sitting on the news set. You're the anchor. Read the story. So I did. And he said, you should think about this as a possible career. And he said, it came out of his mouth and I'm thinking, there's no way. I could never do anything like this. This is not in my wheelhouse. I wouldn't be able to do it. There were some things in my background as a person in middle school and high school and during college that really did prepare me for something that I ended up doing, but it just didn't cross my mind. It was probably about, 3 or 4 months later, I'm getting ready to go into my office. I'm standing at the top of the stairs, and this might sound odd to some of our audience. Some will appreciate it, some will not. I heard an audible voice. It was very authoritative, yet it was comforting, and I listened to it, and it said, quit your job. You're going into television. Now, I looked around and I realized I'm in my apartment all by myself. My roommate's not here. And the TV's not on, the radio's not on. And I heard it one more time. And it was so profound for me. I didn't give it a second thought. I just got in the car. I drove to work. I walked into my boss's. I'm giving you my 2 weeks notice. And he was shocked. He said, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm going into television. And he laughed out loud. and I just looked at him and he said, wait a minute, you're serious about this? I said, yes, I am. And there was something about me. He looked at me and says, you look so different. I believe you. From that point, I quit my job. I moved back home. I went to school and I took a broadcasting class, a journalism class. And the first night of the broadcasting class, the professor did a video of all students. Each one had to do something impromptu in front of the camera. When class was over, he dismissed everybody and he said, you stay. Pulled up the video. Back and then it was a cassette tape. And so we watched it together. It's very uncomfortable to watch yourself on TV. I don't know how you feel about listening to yourself on the radio, but it's odd. So I listened to it cringing, and he turned to me and he said, we're on to something here. He handed me a business card. He said, this is Craig Prosser. He's a bureau chief for KOVR TV. Go see him. He needs an intern. Called him up the next day, got an interview with him. He hired me as an intern. I worked there for 4 months. I did everything interns do, plus wrote stories. They came to me and said, a weekend weather spot has opened up at KOVR. You need to apply, and we're going to help you put together a resume tape and update your resume. And they all went together working on me, getting me prepared. The photographer drove my audition tape and my resume to the news director. News director calls me the next day, brings me in for an interview. He has interviewed 25 total people, called 7 of us back for an audition live in the studio.
Wow.
I went in, I did the audition. Of course, 2 hours before the audition, I got myself locked out of my house and had to have my neighbor come over and break in. So I get there, I do the audition, and lo and behold, I was hired to do weekend weather and report and do some anchoring. And that was in Sacramento, the 20th market in television. That was in April of 1981. Was not a meteorologist at that point. I worked there for 3.5 years. And I'm trying to get a job at KCRA. They told me to hang on. They were going to have something for me. And I kept thinking it's never going to happen, never going to happen. And I'm schlepping my tape, my reel up and down the Central Valley of California, Fresno, all the small TV stations in California. And nothing was happening. And then one day, out of the blue, Bruce Edwards, who was in charge of the meteorologist at the Weather Channel, called me on the phone. And he offered me a job at the brand new startup, the Weather Channel. I didn't fly out here to interview. They offered it to me over the phone. They wanted a female. They wanted someone with West Coast experience in television. And they hired me based upon what they'd seen on a tape. And I didn't send it in. I still to this day don't know who gave them that tape of my work at KOVR. But I wasn't going to question it because I believe God decided that that is where I was going to go, that TV and weather were going to be my future. And I followed what I was basically told. And some people can look at that and say, okay, she's a wackadoodle. Or they can say, because people do. They say, she's crazy.
Well, Karen, you don't seem to be this type, but for me, that still small voice has to be pretty loud sometimes.
Yes, and it was a very loud voice. It was very loud. It got my attention, and you have to listen to that. So for these people who don't know what's where they're going with it, they have to sometimes just be quiet, be still, and listen. Maybe for you, it's your inner voice. Maybe it is your guardian angel. Maybe it is God. For you, for me, it was, in my opinion. But I listened. And if I had not listened, if I had blown it off, where would I be today? What would I be doing? So I took the job at the Weather Channel, worked there for 2 years. I was pursued by several different TV stations around the country at that point. We get to 1986, and I was going to take the first offer I had, which was in Miami from WTVJ, to do weekend weather there. I got a phone call from the news director who said, your contract is on my desk. I'd be more than happy for you to sign it. However, we've been bought out by the network. We're all leaving. I'm leaving. Everybody you met when you were here, we're all leaving. And he said, I believe it's just going to be chaos until the network gets things straightened out. My advice to you is to stay put or call Channel 2 back and tell them you're available after all, because I had turned WSB-TV down. They offered me the job at the same time that WTVJ did, and I had turned them down. I was too embarrassed to call them up and say, I've changed my mind. And so I stayed. 6 months later, I get a phone call from the news director at Channel 2, and they offered me the job again, and I took it. And of course, the rest is history. But so that's my path that got me into TV. It's an odd one, but it got me there.
Before we go to Reader's Digest and get a little more deep, when you decided to take the job with the Weather Channel, that was still a fairly new cable channel. I remember my parents, especially my dad, loving it. He goes, it's never the same thing twice. It's always new. Yeah. But that was here in Atlanta, yes. The Weather Channel. So were you ready for that relocation from the West Coast to the Southeast?
I didn't know, but I was willing. I was ready to do. I was ready for something new in my life. I was born and raised in California. My family was there. All my friends were there. But I decided that this was something I needed to do for me. And I was willing to go there. It was going to be a new adventure. It could have turned out really terrible, but it didn't. It turned out really great. There were bumps along the way, but it turned out really great. And I do not regret moving out here. Obviously, I'm still in Georgia. I never left. I never went home.
Well, and you came to Atlanta at an interesting time in the history of the city, because Atlanta really grew up a lot in the late 70s, early 80s, and into the 90s, and went from a small-ish southern city to a very modern city. So yes. It had to be kind of an exciting time to be in that business.
It was, and the business itself was changing so much. The technology was growing. So when I first started in weather, we didn't have graphic computers. We had a board that you pulled out of the wall and used a marker to do, and you used sticky stuff to put cardboard things onto your weather board, suns and clouds and rain symbols. Wow. And you use magnetic numbers put on there. By the time I got to the Weather Channel, we were using live line 4s or 3s or something like that to do graphics with. And when I got to Channel 2, the computer they had was some old dinosaur. And I looked at that thing thinking, oh my goodness, I can't figure this thing out. We eventually went to some upgrades. And that was the wonderful thing about working for the Cox family owned stations, is that they put money into their products. So we got all the latest, greatest tools that we needed to create weather. But when I did get there were only 2 weather people, Glenn Burns and myself. We covered all the shows. Wow. It was very interesting. And by the time I left, we had 5 meteorologists, all of us meteorologists. All of us had our AMS weather seals. Some had CBMs. And we had the latest, greatest computer equipment available and the best radar in the southeastern U.S. So we had the best of everything. So we went from satellite images were 12 hours old by the time I showed them to people. Today, they're seconds old. Radars were these old Cavourus things that couldn't pick up anything, basically. But today, radars, at least the WSB radar, is live. It's not 5 minutes old or even seconds old. It's actually live radar and can detect birds flying through the air, for heaven's sakes.
It's crazy.
So the technology just exploded, and my mind would explode at times because we were always going through new training on some new software, some new thing, learning new techniques, new technology. It was absolutely amazing.
When we moved here in the late 70s, I remember my dad's office calling the FBI office in Birmingham to see if it was snowing there and making a decision on whether or not to close the office based on what was going on in Birmingham.
Yeah.
So
when we would have, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so it definitely was not up to the minute.
No. So Brian Monahan replaced me when I retired. And when he first came to the station, they started pairing him with me because we would do team weather when there was a big event. And there was a winter storm event coming up. And Brian is really super smart. He has a master's degree in severe storms forecasting. Cool. And when we're sitting down going over this forecast, it was one of those situations where you get a wedge that comes in, that cold high pressure comes in, and you get rain over the top. Some areas are going to get freezing rain, some are going to get sleet, some are going to get just rain. Mm-hmm. So we're looking at the whole scenario, and Brian says, this whole thing's just going to be all rain. I looked at him and said, okay, well, you can go with that if you want to, but this is my morning newscast. And so I'm going to go with my forecast. And I said, this area up here in Hall County is going to get a lot of freezing rain. And over Gwinnett County, all the way down past Jimmy Carter is going to get some freezing rain. And into Atlanta, there's probably going to be a little bit of sleet. You get south of I-20, it's just going to be nothing but rain. And he had never done forecasting here before. So he was basing it purely on models, on the computer models. Which when you live in Georgia, in certain weather systems, you just have to have experience.
Right.
You just have to know based upon it. Because you just know the terrain. We have so many microclimates. That's why when a meteorologist goes on TV and says to the broadcast area, which goes almost to Macon, and then all the way up to Clay County in North Carolina, all these people hear you say, so there's snow in the forecast. It's going to be here. But after you say snow in the forecast, everybody loses their mind and they don't pay attention to where the snow is. It's just going to be snow everywhere, and we all have to buy all the sleds and do all the things because
I was going to say,
we're getting
there's
snow.
Literally no way to understand Atlanta unless you live here.
No,
because you are not kidding when you say that. Because I have seen times when I'm like, no, we're not. They're saying there's nothing north of 285 is going to get snow. But you go into every Publix and Kroger outside Atlanta and all the bread's gone.
Absolutely. Do you know when I would go grocery shopping prior to one of those weather forecasts, whether I needed bread and milk or not, I never bought it. Because I knew that I had put out a forecast that said some areas might see a little bit of this. I didn't want them to see me buying any products like that because they would think, oh my gosh, we're going to stock up for 2 weeks.
Oh my God, Karen's buying bread. Oh my God, what does this mean? What does this mean? Because I heard her earlier, she was talking about sleep, but that wasn't for us, but she's buying bread. Oh my God, nobody actually buys bread, do they?
No, never. Not until it snows.
So Brian was.
Well, you know what's funny is I know we're kind of talking current events, but you know what's funny is just as you were retiring, it was about 4 years ago when they thought we were only getting about 1/10 of an inch of snow in places in Northwest Georgia. We ended up getting like 10 inches.
Yes, that happens.
It happens.
It happens, and you stand there looking at everything that the model said, and they were absolutely wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and you try to explain that, and the viewers will say,
"Oh, they're so forgiving. They just forgive you, don't they?"
Most do, yeah. Most do. But there are a few that don't, and that's okay. I mean, but it is and I always would try to explain. If somebody sent me an email or posted something on my social media page and said that I was an idiot because I got the forecast wrong, I always reached out to that person and tried to invite them. I actually invited people to the station so they could see what we do.
Wow.
And I won some souls that way.
Mm-hmm.
They actually converted them to being a fan again instead of thinking that we were all out to lunch. But I would always try to come to them face to face to be able to say, here, this is what we do. I want you to see what we do, how difficult it is, what a large area it is. And so what happened here, it was an anomaly. It should not have done that because something was off. People needed to, and I tried to explain to them, the model that we use, a human being actually put the data in. Then something changes, that data is out there. And maybe the model's going to pick it up. Some models are better than others. Mm-hmm. And so we had to figure out on a daily basis, especially with the snow ice situation, which model was handling it better. The same thing with the hurricane tracks. Which model, and there are a lot of them, which one is handling it better? So you can be more detailed in where is it going to go, how much rain is it going to bring, or in a snow situation, how much snow, ice, if any at all, will happen. And I can tell you that each of those forecasts that were so much like that, I would leave at the end of the day with an excruciating headache because I cared that much to get it right. And when it just didn't work out, you feel terrible. You really do feel terrible.
You know what's crazy? I do a morning radio in a smaller market station. It's a mid-market station in Northwest Georgia. And so I'm not a meteorologist. So I read the weather as given to me. And I still feel like crap when I tell somebody no threat of rain at all today. And then 6 hours later, there's a monsoon for 45 minutes. And everybody calls me, you said no rain. I'm like, you know what? It's Mother Nature. You know, I'm right 75% of the time, fine, whatever.
Yeah. I had a lot of contractors call me back in the day before they would do email things. But then with times caught up with that, they would send emails or do something on one of my social media pages. And they would say, I'm pouring concrete tomorrow or I'm pouring concrete this afternoon. I need a window. Can you tell me? And I'd sweat bullets over it, but I would do the absolute best that I could. And they would email me back and say, thank you. You saved me, thousands of dollars or hundreds of, or whatever it was that, I was able to postpone it and I could get the job done during the time frame you said. So I did my utmost best to help folks get through those times. My number one thing was safety for people. That was my number one thing in weather, was making sure people were safe and knew what to do in emergencies.
Before we kind of talk about some of the other things you did on television, because we're focused on weather, and I always believe had my life changed by 1% of 1 degree, I was probably going to be a tornado chaser. I always have been fascinated by weather, thunderstorms, bad weather, and still to this day, I wish it's like that. I feel like the kid who wishes to be able to see the tornado, but I don't want the tornado to hurt anybody. It's weird because I'm so fascinated by weather. It's amazing, but I never want anybody hurt. And yet, unfortunately, weather does sometimes have disastrous results. Do you ever feel that way where you're fascinated by the subject you're covering, but you also know it could be a deadly subject?
Absolutely. I worry about when the big storms come and lightning, because lightning is one of the major killers of people. They get caught outside. They don't know what to do. They huddle under a tree, and that's the worst place you can go because lightning is going to strike the tallest object. Today, I pulled the air conditioning guy into my house because I said, you're standing near a bunch of metal and you got an umbrella in your hand. So there's lightning out there. Get inside. So I did worry about that. I stressed over and over with people. I tried never to do anything that would make them anxious or upset or freak out about anything. I just would tell them, these are the rules you need to follow. Teach your family, your children, what you need to do when severe storms are coming. Know where to go. Have your plan so that when these storms come up and we tell you about them, that you don't have to think about what to do. Your reaction should be like when you get up in the morning and you brush your teeth. You don't think about how to brush your teeth. You just brush your teeth. It should be the same way with severe weather. Your plan of action. What are you going to do? You got tornadoes that could strike. So where's your plan? Where are you going to be? Where are the kids going to be? What are you going to do with your animals? Have the leashes available for them. Helmets for people in the house. If you ride bikes, you all have helmets anyway. Have them nearby so you can put them on. I actually have my mom's old hard hat from she worked for facilities and planning at the Lodi Unified School District. That's hanging downstairs. I can put that on. It protects my head. So have your plan of action. And that was my whole thing. Make sure the people are prepared for what to do. You might not have severe weather in your neighborhood, but know what to do if it happens.
Mm-hmm. And that's the most important thing. Let me ask you this, because I remember growing up and being fascinated by weather. And I think one of the, for me, from the outside looking in, I don't know, you may have a different idea, but I was going to ask, how important was the invention of Doppler radar for your field?
Oh, tremendous. You can see things that you could not have seen years ago when I started in the business. We, at Channel 2, looking at that Doppler radar, we could see the beginnings of a tornado formation before there's a tornado warning.
Oh, wow.
So you might often hear on air when they're showing you radar and they'll go into the Doppler mode where you see the green and the red together. And while there's no tornado warning, they will look at that. Brad Nitz will be on the air, Brian Monahan, Glenn Burns, whichever meteorologists are there. They'll look at that and they'll point it out. See right here, the velocity of this is this many miles an hour on that. The total winds are like 140 miles an hour, what have you. They can see that it's forming. There's no warning on this, but please, this is a potential spot where a tornado may be forming right now. Please head to your basement or your lowest place in your house, your safe spot. So we did that often when we would see those things coming together, like what they call a little couplet. This is a time for you to head to safety. And pretty soon here comes the warning. And we would verify it by National Weather Service, just put a tornado warning on this particular spot. This is one we've been telling you about for the last 5 minutes. Please get to safety now. And we could then track it and show them what towns along the way are going to be in the path of that storm. And we can tell them what time it's going to be there. So the development of that Doppler radar is the element that really saves people's lives. It just saves their lives.
With that in mind, because to me, that's one of the most incredible inventions in my lifetime for being able to predict, especially significant weather events, knowing where the rotation is, where the winds are when they're coming to versus going away from the radar to pick up that cyclonic activity. Is there anything else that maybe the layperson wouldn't know that you look back and go, this was a significant invention in helping me be able to do my job better?
Well, the radar is probably the single most important, but also the fact that things improve so much with getting instantaneous satellite images, the radar images being live, and updates on the models every few minutes instead of every 12 hours. So you're getting brand new data some 5 minutes, some 30 minutes, but it's constantly being updated instead of me coming in at 2 a.m. and looking over data that came in after Glenn left at 11:30, but it's still hours old. I mean, that doesn't really do you much good in the next few hours. It's so old. Things will have changed during that 6-hour to 12-hour time frame. So it's everything coming in so quickly that it's fresh constantly.
Well, I know if you're a weirdo like me, I've got like 9 weather apps on my phone. So I will drive my kids crazy during big events because I'll have, y'all on my iPad watching the news. And then I'm, looking at my phone, trying to look at the Weather Channel app and the WSB app and, all the others. And I'm looking for the Hook Echo and the, and the radar and everything else. And I can almost drive myself mad with it. And I'm an amateur. I'm sure y'all are just inundated with data when you have something like this going on.
Constantly looking at it. Of course, today, since I'm retired, I don't bother. But when I was working, yes, I seriously don't look unless I have to tell somebody in my family, you better take your umbrella. There's going to be storms today.
I was going to say, do you just walk out and look at the clouds and go, I guess I need to take my umbrella?
I do. We had a big storm the other day and it was just like raining so hard, lightning everywhere. And I was visiting I had taken my mother to see my father in the nursing facility and the storm was tremendous. And so I pulled up my phone and I snapped on the WSB weather app and went straight to the radar and I looked at it and I animated it and I said, "Yep, we're here for a while, Mom." It was not going anywhere and it rained on us for about an hour and heavy stuff. So those apps are really good. You can go into different modes if you understand how to do them. But as a meteorologist, when I was working, even though I wasn't on duty then, I knew that I would be at a certain point. So I was always looking at the information, getting prepared for, and I would also look at it because I've been caught in tornado weather trying to drive to work. I guarantee you, I only did that one time because it scared me to death in the dark, driving with water all over the place. It was the Dunwoody and Cobb County tornado. And it was terrible. And I vowed at that point never to do that again. So I would go into work hours early to avoid having to drive in during the storm. So I paid attention. There were times when I would get up at 11 o'clock at night to go in for my 4:30 or 4 a.m. show so that I could get there before the big storm started rolling through because it is dangerous. And I would always tell people, look, I'm telling you now, you should not be on the road during this time. Please, go now on your trip or delay it for 12 hours because it's not a good idea to be out there in this bad weather. So I was always up to date on everything.
We're going to stick with weather for just a few more minutes because that's obviously where we are. That's your main, what you did for the majority of your career. Do you miss it? Do you miss being part of predicting and telling people and being part of that information conduit and sometimes that comfort conduit of what's going to happen?
No, I'm very comfortable where I am. I'm very comfortable. I had my time. I did my thing. I worked with the best meteorologists in the country. I miss them. I don't miss the day-to-day anymore. Television has changed quite a lot. And so I don't miss all that and keeping up with the social media and being online, being on air and also still having to tweet and Instagram and Facebook at the same time. It really is all consuming and you are worn out at the end of the day. And so when it came time for me to retire, I was done. I miss the people, but I stay in touch with them. So yeah, I don't miss the day-to-day doing meteorology, but I pay attention enough to the weather so that I don't get caught out into a bad situation.
All right, I'm going to, because Walt has 3 daughters, I've got 4. So between the two of us, we're only too short of a softball team. For some of the females who are listening and some of the people, male or female, but specifically, meteorology, a lot of times people I think still think is about hard science. It's about, you've got to be a specific person with a specific type and a specific thing to be able to even do it. But I've always told my girls, if you've got a fascination for something, if you've got a love of something, if you've got a subject that drives you, there's nothing that should stop you from going after it. And you and I have, chatted a little bit before we brought you on. I want to try to use you for an example of, going after your dream and listening to that inner voice.
Not everybody knows exactly what they want to do from day one. Some do. I have friends who knew from the time they were young children that they wanted to be a meteorologist. I didn't know. I was pushed toward it by other forces, as we've already spoken. I already had a degree in biological sciences, but when I started weather, I didn't have a degree in meteorology. I went to Mississippi State as a divorced mother of 2 young girls, working full-time at Channel 2, anchoring the morning newscast and doing weather. It took me 4 years to complete my study of meteorology so that I could have all the courses I needed in order to get my American Meteorological Society AMS seal. And I did that because I knew it was important. It was important for the station and important for me to accomplish that. I never did want to have the title of weather girl. Probably my science background was part of that. I wanted to be known as someone who knew what they were talking about and had the education to back that up. That being said, along the way, there were people who spoke to me in ways that let me understand they did not think that I had what it took to do the job. I was a female. I was a weather girl. And in their minds would never be anything more. I had an assistant news director pull me aside in the hallway one day in the early part of my career and say to me, if it were up to me, I'd fire you on the spot. You're the worst thing I've ever seen doing weather.
Good grief.
And I looked at that person and I stayed very calm. And I looked at him and he had said, if he was news director, he would do it. He would fire me. And I looked at him and I said very calmly, well, I guess it's a good thing for me that you're not.
Yeah.
He walked into the newsroom. I walked to the ladies' room very slowly, walked in there, went into the stall, closed the door, unlocked it, and boo-hooed for about 5 minutes. And then I came out, dried off my tears, put my makeup all back together, walked out and did the noon show. And you just have to learn to kind of take those things. People are going to try to knock you down. I had the experience in other jobs as well. People, in fact, an agent said to me after looking at my tape, she said, you will never make it in television. My advice to you is learn how to type.
Wow.
Go to work in an office.
Good grief.
So I've had that. When I worked for International Dairy Queen, I had men pull my boss aside and say, she can't do the job. Look how she looks.
Amazing. I know this is for some people listening going, how did that exist? But yeah, how did people look at you and go, just because you look certain way, they know your education?
I was promoted from district manager to senior district manager back in the day at Dairy Queen. And in order to do that, you had to take this all-day exam. It was quite extensive on everything in the company and how they worked, so on and so forth. I scored higher on that test than any district manager had ever scored. And they called Chuck, my boss, up and said, there's no way anybody who looks like her can't do that. And I, he told me that, and he said, you have to work twice as hard as any man in this business, in any business for that matter. Chuck was great. He was God rest his soul. He passed away years ago, but He told me, he taught me, he said, you've got to work hard. You can't get by on just being as good as the guys. It will never work. You've got to work harder. And I had when I got into television, I had also a male mentor. He was one of the bosses at Channel 2. He wasn't my boss, but he took me aside and basically said the same thing to me. Karen, you have got to be better than any man in this position. You've got to be better. You have to work harder. You have to study harder, or they're going to dismiss you out of hand. So you have to work hard. Now, every one of the young women who've come up behind me, they've been through the same thing. And you would think today that wouldn't happen. And I'm not a feminist. I'm not out there marching with signs and all that. No. I'm just saying to the women, don't take offense. Don't be angry. Don't say, I'm gonna show them. Yes, show them, but don't be angry about it. Just go about your day, do your business, do it really, really well, so that there's no way in the world that anybody can say to you, you're not good enough, because you have to work really hard in order to do it. But you can. It is possible. A single mom raising 2 children, working 12 hours a day, going to school, studying for 4 hours a day on top of that, getting very little sleep. I did it. I got my American Meteorological Seal of Approval in 1999. I was able to do it. If anybody could, my high school counselor told my parents not to bother to send me to college because they said I'm not smart enough.
Holy crap.
I graduated from university. Look up the university. It's not an easy school to get into or to graduate from. University of the Pacific in Stockton, California. I have a degree in biological sciences from that university. It's a private university. If Miss Jurgensen was alive today and she had followed my college career, followed my professional career, I think she would think twice. So anybody listening today, hear me say this. If you are a high school counselor, if you are a teacher, anything that deals with students, and I don't care if it's a female or a male student, do not tell them that they can't do it. If you are a parent, a grandparent, a person who's involved in your young people's lives in your family, do not say, well, you just have to make do. You're never going to have this. You're not going to be able to settle. No, you don't have to settle. Alan, you said as we first started, if you have a dream or a passion, I always call it a passion. If you have a passion, if you get up every day and you think, feel, dream, it's in your system that you just can't function the rest of your life without it. I don't care what the guy down the street or the man in the big office over here says. You have to go for it. It's not going to be handed to you. You have to work hard for it every single day. Mm-hmm. Work hard for it. Prove to yourself, number one. And then the others will realize, oh my goodness, he or she, they did this. They did this. Or you can also be on the other side of that coin. I was there as a support person. I encouraged. So all of you out there listening, encourage these young people to go after their dreams. You got to do that.
Well, Karen, the crazy thing about all that, too, is that I don't just turn on the news and listen to whoever's talking. Like, when there is a storm, I always turn to Channel 2. And that has been true for years because y'all were right a lot more often than anybody else.
Thank you.
So when you came on, or one of the other WSB folks came on, but I remember particularly when you came on thinking, I'm going to get the straight scoop. Like, I had more confidence in y'all than anybody else. And that's not easily earned in a city like Atlanta, where there are other really talented people on other channels. And particularly, as you said earlier, with the crazy weather that we get and I mean, it is a crazy environment here. And it just is kind of dumbfounding to hear that people said those things to you earlier in your career. And I do hope that every one of them has paid attention to where you ended up. And I've heard people, a lot of people with these kinds of stories of, my counselor told me that I'd never amount to anything, or my teacher said that, I'd never do anything exciting. And, here they are doing amazing things. So, but I think that you're exactly right. That perseverance and putting your shoulder to the wheel and saying, I am going to make this happen, is what it takes. It's not going to get handed to you.
It's not going to be handed to you. And the one thing that I say is that if it's your passion, you have to go for it, and to never, ever, ever, not ever give up. The only reason to stop something is if your goals change. Mm-hmm. That's it.
Along this line, I just remembered a line that one of those famous phrases: "Success is the best revenge."
Yes. Exactly.
And I know here's the thing. Yes, everyone's going to have challenges. And sometimes just by your sex, your race, your gender, you may have additional challenges. But I don't know, except unless you're maybe born with a silver spoon, everyone's got to work for what they want. And everyone's got to figure out and discover who they are and what they are in their core, and then go for it. I think we can all pull up a story of where someone in our lives told us we can't do something, we'll never amount to anything. That's not the right career. That's not the right hobby, or the right. You've got to be able to be strong enough to persevere through the naysayers, because it's human instinct, unfortunately, to be negative. It's very difficult to stay positive.
You're spot on. It's not. And while I was speaking from a female point of view, I also mentioned the young man, because we had tours coming through the station of students all the time. And there was this young man. And I would ask students, what is it you want to do? And this young man said something about what he was interested in. He said, but I don't think I'll ever be able to do that. I said, why? What would? And it was because of the outside influences he was hearing from other people. Mm-hmm. And I said, that is not part of your vocabulary anymore. Because if this is what you want to do, it's certainly not going to be handed to you. But it is certainly within your power to make that happen by hard work, taking the classes, learning the information, applying for the schools, and working really hard, and keeping it foremost in your mind that this is what I want to do and I'm not stopping. I mean, look at all of our physicians who've known since they were little they wanted to go to med school. Look how much schooling they took to get to where they are and all the things that they learned. It boggles my mind how smart they are. But they didn't allow anybody to derail their plan. And so the rest of us doing our other jobs, I consider my job a normal job, is to not allow someone else to derail you. You must stay on the path that you know is right for you. And the only way to change that path is because your goals changed. Because my goal was to go work for Good Morning America as a meteorologist in New York City. Well, they called me. They called to talk to me about moving to New York to be on Good Morning America. I had 2 small children and I was still going to school for meteorology. So that was not a good plan. So we ended the conversation because I wasn't at the point where that was a possibility to even talk any further. But at least they called and were interested and they knew who I was. But my plans then changed because I realized I'm a small town girl. And even though Atlanta is big, Atlanta's still a small town when you think about it. In all the communities around us, we're still small town, country town, basically. And we're just a little fancier than most in the Atlanta metro area. But I grew up in a small farming community in California. So I really feel comfortable here. And it was a better place to raise my children than flying off to New York City.
I just can't imagine making that change from Georgia, where we have trees and rivers and dirt that you can actually see, and making that move to New York. I mean, I understand that people do it for a career, but I just cannot imagine making that jump after being in Atlanta this long.
Well, I couldn't do it now. And I realized when I had pre-elementary and elementary children, that's not the place to raise a family. And so I stayed put. Georgia, I've now lived in Georgia longer than I lived in California, where I was born and raised. So I am a Georgia peach with California roots.
As we begin to wrap up the interview portion, and you said before we even got on, you're going to hang out with us through the rest of the show, which I'm really excited about. One of the things before I get to my last question, I want to get to this piece. You were always, at least from my perspective, when I first met you, I was doing things with the Chamber of Commerce. I worked part-time on the radio side of WSB. You were so interested in talking to the kids that we would bring by to show them the career of journalism, the career of either radio, television, meteorology, behind the scenes, just everything that goes into journalism and production. And
yes,
I think that is a testament to how much you care about putting a positive image forward. And I want to say thank you, because you made it very easy to sell my desire to go back over and over again down and talk to you guys, because you made yourselves accessible.
Thank you. I enjoy talking with the children. I also love talking with the interns that worked for us during their summers and during the school year. And some of the reporters would send these interns, that they were mainly in news, they would send the interns down to talk to me because I gave them the real story. And the real story is that if you're going to work in television more so than radio, but radio still to a certain extent, I'm sure, and I don't have experience with that. You do, of course, but in TV, your life is not your own. Once you sign on the dotted line, and you're working for a TV station and you're a reporter or a news anchor or a meteorologist on air, you belong to them and they own you. And that is good, but there are also some negatives. So I made sure that they knew everything that was great and wonderful about it, but I also wanted them to know the real deal. It is not a glamorous job. People see you on TV. Yeah, the makeup artist would meet me in the studio at 2 a.m. or in the green room at 2 a.m. and do the makeup, and I would do my hair, and then I would go in the studio and off, and they'd come in and touch you up if necessary. And so that was fun. But when you start out in TV, you're never going to have a Monday through Friday 9 to 5 job, ever. Mm-hmm. You're going to probably in the first years of your career work weekends. You're going to work all holidays. You're going to have your vacations canceled because a snowstorm is coming, or a severe weather is coming, or a big breaking news story is coming and the anchors are there for days. So we were stuck with the ice storm and all interstates are shut down. And so we've packed a bag with a week's worth of clothes, hoping that that's going to last us long enough. And you either sleep on an air mattress in the green room, or they might shuttle you to a hotel so you can get a few hours of sleep and then come back and you're there for days. And I don't mean to make it sound negative, because it's not, and it turns into more of a party atmosphere. And when Marion Pittman, our news director at that time, was with us, she kept us so fed. I'm surprised that we all didn't gain 10 pounds during one of those events, because she kept food flowing all the time and water coming to keep us happy and satisfied. Are everybody okay? She was always checking, is everybody okay? It was like really a great situation. However, you had to give up that other part of your life. I missed no school events for my children, swim meets or ballet for my daughters. I was there for every nutcracker and every performance with the Atlanta Ballet and every swim meet for my youngest daughter. But I did have to cancel a couple of birthday parties and reschedule them because I ended up working. So you may have a party coming up on a weekend. You're having guests to your house, but oops, I got to work now. So you got to reschedule these things. I got called back. I'm in the car on the way to Florida. It's spring break. I'm going to go with my daughters on spring break. And I get the phone call. I'm sorry, but you have to work tomorrow. So I send the kids with somebody else and I have to catch up with them later. So that's the kind of thing I tell all these interns about, that you're not going to have 9 to 5. You're not going to get off holidays. You're going to work strange hours. You're going to be tired sometimes. But if you really love what you do, that won't matter.
Right.
And so if you can deal with all of that, and you don't want to be a 9 to 5er Monday through Friday and have all holidays off, this is the job for you, because it's new and it's different every single day. It's exciting, it's fun, it's hard. But when you've accomplished the goal, you feel like, yes, as in whether I saved somebody's life, or I allowed somebody to have a great time, or you gave a new story that helped somebody to get through a certain situation, it is all worth for me.
Walt, before I get to my last question, you got anything more for Karen on the interview side?
Well, Karen, what do you think the weather world and the news world in general is going to look like in the coming future? Do you think it's going to be more 24-hour access to everything, or do you think that they'll continue to try to have the noon, 6 and 11 news? How do you think that world is going to change?
I personally, because before I retired, we were already going to that. We would finish at 7 a.m., the 4:30 to 7 a.m. newscast. We would then start immediately live streaming. And we would live stream until 9 o'clock. After I retired, they live streamed until 10:30 or 11. And then they would have a break and they'd come on and do the noon to 1. Then they would live stream until 1 or 1:30 or 1:30 or 2. I think they've pulled back on that a little bit now with the new owners of the station. But honestly, because of the people my children's age who are in their 30s, and then especially those younger than that who are in their 20s and 30s coming out of college, they don't watch local news the way I grew up watching local news. My girls are very informed. They know everything that's going on, but they get their information in a different way. So they are using apps. They are finding it in other manners. So they are going to have to be doing their newscasts, not just on broadcast TV. It's going to be done a different way. And you'll see that. I know Channel 2 changed their 11 o'clock format a while back. I don't know if it's still the same, but they were doing basically one topic for the entire 30 minutes instead of the breaking news and who died and who got shot and all that kind of stuff. They had changed that somewhat. I honestly, I don't watch local news anymore myself, so they're not getting ratings from me because I'm not watching. But I think they're going to have to find other resources to get their information out. And even for an old person like myself, first thing I do in the morning is I pick up my little cell phone and I go scrolling through looking for, where did we blow up around the world? Is our country still in one piece?
Right. Yes.
That's what I do. Yeah, that's the way I do it. And I think if I'm at 67 and I'm doing that, I know the 27-year-old is probably not turning on the newscast between 4:30 and 7 o'clock in the morning either.
Yeah, I still flip the news on, but you're right. I'm getting the more up-to-date and the more tailored for what my interests are news from my phone.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
I'm going to throw this in there from my background. Unfortunately, I see that as a double-edged sword, because when you choose the news you want to hear, you're missing out on the news you need to hear. And sometimes that can cause problems when trying to get information out there, because people will intentionally not seek the news that goes against the way they want to see it.
Do you know what I do? Because I really rarely go on Facebook anymore. I still have my professional Facebook page. I have a personal one as well that information is only to my hometown people. And I have an Instagram page. I don't post very much there, but on Twitter, I follow specific reporters, not based upon their politics, but based upon how I know them to be a great reporter. And I don't follow a right-leaning or a left-leaning site. I follow a specific reporter I know gives me just the facts, a Walter Cronkite kind of person. Just give me the facts. I want to know what's happening. So there are a variety of people I follow that I know are going to give me stories without any leaning one way or the other, because I don't care how someone believes. That's their personal thing. I just want to know breaking news. There's some international reporters, there's some national reporters, and there's some local people I know personally who are great dig into the ground kind of reporters that just go in there and find the stories. And those are the ones that I follow, so that I know I'm getting news that is good for me to hear. And maybe I don't want to hear it, but I follow them so that I know what's happening. And then I want to know whether the world blew up last night. So I check that out.
I think that is so important. And I know I get that all the time. Well, where do you get your information? It's like, well, because I have to follow everybody and read everything 17 different ways. So that way I get, and I can piece it together. What did this one person leave out that this other person had? And where's the commonality where I can say that's all the same, so that must be true. What's missing, And it's tough.
It is. I read some things and I think, well, that couldn't have happened like that. So you have to dig.
Mm-hmm.
You have to dig.
And I think that to Walt's point and to yours about, this idea of going and getting your news, the hard part is I can't tell someone to go try 12 different sources. Some people I know, they're comfortable with their one source because it says exactly what they want to hear. And sometimes they need to hear that there is a different perspective out there. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on. A lot of times you're getting news now packaged to an audience. And I'm hoping it changes for the better. Right now, I don't see it as so good anymore. I think it's with the 24-hour news cycle, you've got now almost niche news where people are just giving what they think their audience wants. And that bothers me.
See, I prefer my echo chamber. I just like that.
You like your echo chamber. Tell me what I want to hear.
Well, one of my friends on the West Coast, she and I will watch news broadcasts that are emanating from other countries.
Yeah.
About what's happening here in this country, so that you can see another perspective of what their news people are saying about what's happening over here. So you can get more than just a one-sided situation.
Like I said, it's a double-edged sword. You can have all the information if you want it, but then you can also isolate yourself and only get those pieces you want to hear. And we'll see how, things are always evolving and changing. My last question for you, Karen, before we move on to our other segments. Normally, I ask somebody in the midst of their career, where do you see yourself in 5 years? But you've retired. I still can ask you that question. What's going to be, what is Karen Minton doing 5 years from now? So we can bring you back and go, how close did we hit the mark? What are your goals now that you have been out of the day-to-day grind?
Well, the first 2 years have been for me to get my sleep back. And I can imagine. And I've done that. I've done that now. I did go to Paris right after I retired. Took my youngest there, and I'm going on a Viking cruise in October, going to 4 countries. There'd be four senior women, all over the age of 64. And we're going to go and have a blast. We're going to have a great time, fun. We've all been vaccinated, so wasn't going to do that, but I did it. And because I want to go on this cruise and being around my elderly parents, I decided to make sure that happened so that I didn't cause any problems for them. And after that time frame, I don't know, I'm looking to see what is my purpose going to be? And I asked that question, I asked God, I'm looking for my new purpose. What is it that you have planned for me? I am ready. I'm ready to start that new purpose in my life. And darned if my father didn't end up in critical care at the hospital and is now in a nursing facility. And my mom is where she is, and I'm running back and forth all over the place. And I'm having the eye surgeries and another surgery. And so that's my plan for the current time. Once I get past this little stage I'm in, and I look at it as a stage, and I'm not concerned or upset about any of the things that are happening right now. It's just my calendar is full, so I don't need to add anything extra to my calendar right now. But after that, I wanted to travel, but I when I was in the hospital with my dad, I realized that doctors and nurses and social workers were making decisions for my father that I disagreed with. And I really wasn't sure. Everybody seemed to be on a different page, and I was quite concerned about the whole thing. And I finally called a meeting. I didn't get the doctor there. I did speak to him later, and he was on my page. But I got all the other elements together in the hallway outside my father's room, and I just said, these are all the things that I'm being told. And I'm being told he's being released today, and none of these things have been done. And I don't know how we're going to do all of this. So I need some assistance and some assurances, and to know that we're all on the same page. So me pulling everybody together, we got all the points together, came up with a plan. If I had said nothing, which I think a lot of family members do, they just listen to one person, and all of a sudden the next thing you know, your elderly family member is either sent off someplace or just dumped out of the hospital, and they're home, and you have nothing and don't know what to do to take care of them. So it was not too long after that, a woman came in. She said, I am the patient advocate. And I said, really? So I started talking to her, and she listened to everything I had to say. And she said, oh my gosh, would you like to do this? I said, what do you mean? And she said, write down this number. She said, we could use you to be a patient advocate. If you would like to volunteer, or if you'd like a paid position, call and talk to this department, because we can use people like you to come in and advocate for families. And so that's how my list of possibilities is to be a volunteer at one of the hospitals, to be there when family members are going, I don't know what to do, and the doctor's not listening to me. Maybe that's something I could do.
Well, you've got the personality, you've got the gumption for it, and having had parents go through what they're going through now, because we all eventually have our parents get older, I think that makes you a perfect candidate, because I think you've also got that sense of connection. And I think you've always had that, and I think that's why you've been such a great asset on TV, because you can tell you have the empathy because you care about the audience.
I do. I still do today.
Well, that's awesome. And I count myself lucky that you and I cross paths, because here we are today.
Yes!
Getting a chance to interview you on our show.
I've never done this before, so yay! Thank you so much.
You may not be saying that in the next segment.
Yeah, in the next few segments, you may go, what have I done?
No.
I have, what is it, from Arrested Development? I have made a terrible mistake.
A terrible mistake.
All right, well, let's get straight to our next segment, a segment we like to call...
God, what is this? Stop it! I don't get me out of this house!
One of the things we do with this season 4 of our podcast, Walt brought this up. He liked the idea of watching cheesy B, C, maybe even D level movies, because he always found bad movies to someone be fun. And I think he's regretted that this season, because we always ask our listeners to pick from one of 3 movies that he puts out on our weekly poll on our Facebook group, our private group. You have to go to facebook.com/The Wilder Ride, then click join group. Once you're in there, it's a private group. It's very easy. You have to answer 3 questions and then watch, because Walt puts out a post, and Walt has to review a really, really bad movie. And Walt, what movie did our listeners pick for you this week?
Well, I threw this one in the poll this week, thinking there's no way anybody picks this one. And I had another one in mind that I was really hoping they would pick. And I got stuck with Pterodactyl. And one of the comments, Wendy Corson commented and said, I'm only voting for this because I want to see how many different ways Walt mispronounces the name of the movie. So I think I'm off to a good start here. This movie, It's not rated, which tells us something. It means that it has never been seen on a screen anywhere other than a TV screen.
There's not a single person in the Motion Picture Association of America goes, I ain't watching that.
No way.
Just put NR and just go move along. Not rated.
No, NW for no watch.
Don't watch.
Don't watch this one. IMDb gives it a stunning 4.2 out of 10.
Well, it's not well, it is. It's bad, but
it's bad.
We've had worse.
Well, I'm not really sure what anybody based that on because it really is not a 4.2. The IMDb summary of this movie is when ancient flying reptiles attack Los Angeles, it is up to two working class friends, the unlikeliest of heroes, to save the day. That's sort of true. I guess that if you had to write a summary, that is a basic summary. It really does not capture the craptastic nature of this film. It is just really horrible. And in fact, there's like a 20-minute segment where it's really just those two idiots talking to each other. A couple other things happen, but it has nothing to do with the pterodactyls. And I think this is even one of those that they didn't name the movie until after it was well into production. And someone in the cast actually mispronounces pterodactyl as pterodactyl. And I think they were like, oh, great. Now we've got the name of the movie. So it is really horrible. And I'm going to go ahead and blow the science for some people in this one because the science of these movies always kind of fascinates me of how they get to where they are.
Mm-hmm.
The theory that they're working off of is that when the meteor struck the Earth and blew everything apart and killed all the dinosaurs.
Oh, what, 65 million years ago?
Yeah, if you buy into that. It threw the pterodactyls out into the universe, so far out that we didn't know where they were, and they just kind of circled out in space, getting angrier and angrier, and now they have returned to Earth to attack humans to get revenge.
Well, they're a hardy lot.
They are, and that was some creative nonsense. I'm imagining that there was either a head bump or weed involved in that writing.
A head bump or weed. Hey, could have been both.
One or the other, could have been both. So, I don't even really know where to start with this thing, so I'm really not going to go too far with it. But it's really dumb, and it has some of the worst elements of these C&D movies. They do have a great scene where they are driving down, I believe it's the 10 in LA, trying to escape from the attack of the pterodactyls. And again, nobody else in traffic knows what's going on. They're all just driving their normal speed. And I think they have the car that they're filming and the lead car with the camera. And I think that's their whole production crew. They don't shut down the interstate or anything. They just drive along.
Very low budget.
Very low budget. One thing, though, is...
No budget.
No budget. The creatures do actually look okay, but that's about it. So, but there is also one thing that I thought was funny. It is also published somewhere under the name of Jurassic Wars. And we have had this movie in our poll before as Jurassic Wars. So,
they rebranded, hopefully for a better audience.
Yes, I'm not sure which one was which. Fortunately, the movie, I think that the only good thing about this movie is there are a couple of mildly humorous scenes. I'm really reaching for it here.
Okay, well, let me to get to the chase. We always like to get to that point where sometimes a movie is so bad it's still entertaining. Where does this fall in the bad movie entertainment side?
If they had cut it down to an hour, it would have been fine.
How long was it?
In about 45 minutes, you realize that you're in for 45 more minutes of hell. And, that literally is when I switched over to my iPad and I went in the kitchen and did some dishes and then took it with me to do some laundry. I just couldn't sit and watch this thing. I think I'm going to close with this.
Okay.
The tagline for the movie is "Get ready to kick some past." That is how creative they are.
Really reaching for a pun.
It is really reaching for it. So I'm gonna kind of give this a no. Don't waste your time or energy on this one. I mean, I really was trying hard to find something redeeming to bring to the table on this one, but there really isn't anything. I mean, it is terrible. And there even are a couple of very oddly placed, like homosexual jokes that would have maybe been okay in like the 60s or 70s movies, but not one that was made in 2016. It was just really out of place and very uncomfortable. So I would shelve this one and skip on to something better like Velocipaster or one of those other classics.
Well, didn't you like the one a couple weeks back with Dennis Hopper? Was that Space Truckers?
Space Truckers, yeah, it was really not bad. Yeah, you could go with that one.
Not too bad.
Space Truckers, Velocipaster, one of those greats. But
excellent.
This was not a great.
Before we move on, Karen, are you a fan of like the bad B movies, or do you just not bother?
No, I actually don't bother. I have.
So you've never seen Velocipaster?
Yeah, no, my friend in California, we're like sisters. I've known her forever. And she's in California and I'm out here. And oftentimes we will watch movies at the same time so we can compare. And she's picked a couple of them and I can't even remember the names of it, but I remember there was one. And there were some very well-known actors into it. And I called her on the phone and I said, "Are you sure about this?" And
it may have been Waterworld. I got stuck with that.
Yeah, it was really, it was terrible. And she said, "But there's such big name actors." I said, "I know, but it can't be a winner every single time." My goodness. So we bail once in a while.
Sometimes it's going to rain.
Yeah, this one.
Sometimes. Yeah.
I would recommend, if you have any inkling of watching this movie, watch the trailer. It's 1:37. It's terrible. And it is representative of the movie.
And it accurately represents the film. There you go.
It really does. So I probably should have just watched the trailer on this one.
All right. Well, folks, if you want to be involved in picking the next movie Walt has to walk through or work through or review, make sure you've gone out there, gone to facebook.com/The Wilder Ride. Like that page, because that's our public page, but then go ahead and click join group, answer a couple of questions. We just want to make sure you're not a bot. We want to make sure you're a real person. We'll let you in, and then you can have all the fun. All right, let's move to our next segment. We have a news segment here, and we scour the internet for all of the greatest, latest breaking news, or actually we find news that breaks the internet. It's a segment we like to call
It's No Bullshit.
And
Walt, you've got the first news story.
Well, this one is actually kind of out of character for me. This is actually kind of a cool story. This comes from the newsherald.com. I don't really know what they are, but out of Dayton, Ohio, Mead Corporation has announced that the Trapper Keeper is on its way back.
Congratulations on your discovery.
Yeah, it's really kind of amazing. I saw the video about this. Crowded hallways with lockers jammed full of papers, crumpled up something in study guides, gnarly fresh wardrobes featuring the latest ripped acid wash jeans, oversized blazers, and fluorescent t-shirts, past notes, mixtapes, and brown bag lunches shoved into backpacks along with textbooks and school supplies. For many, the new school year brings back a tidal wave of memories and nostalgia about their days in school. And nothing more symbolic of these golden years of the late 80s and early 90s than the most iconic school supply of them all, the Trapper Keeper. Trapper Keepers didn't just help millions of students stay organized and keep their papers together. It helped them show off their personal flair. I'm sure, Alan, yours did that.
Yeah, because my mom bought like the green Trapper Keeper. It's just solid color.
I had red.
Why have like anything cool like horses or dinosaurs or Batman? I had
Or
green.
the Rubik's Cube.
Yeah. No, I didn't even have that.
Whether toting a cute Trapper Keeper with puppies and kittens, a super sweet style with brilliant geometric patterns and laser beams, or the totally classic rainbows and unicorns, Trapper Keeper was one of the must-have school supplies for millions of kids as they navigated their way through middle school and high school. And now this school season, the original Trapper Keeper is back, featuring 7 new outrageous designs and blends with red coolness of the Trapper Keeper from the 80s and 90s and the total retro fashion trend. Today's Trapper Keeper will make a statement and keep students organized. This is kind of a press release, I think.
It sounds like it.
It has the same carry-all dependability and durability that made it essential school supply and includes features such as the inside storage pocket, a metal clip, and Alan, do you remember the other feature of the Trapper Keeper?
Didn't it have like a Ziploc place to put your pens and pencils?
Well, it had that, but the Velcro closure.
Oh, right. It closed a little Velcro tab.
That's right. The famous Velcro is back. The unmistakable rip that tore through classrooms as students open and close their Trapper Keeper to get ready for their next class and keep their commitments in place. It also has 2 folders with vertical pockets to keep paper secure. Store the folders in their 3 hole punch sheets in the sturdy #1 metal binding, a metal clip on the back, and a whole bunch of other stuff that the Trapper Keeper made famous for us as we were growing up. You can actually purchase it today at mead.com or at walmart.com or in your local Walmart store.
It's no bullshit.
Wow. Here's the thing. My kids, we never had the Trapper Keepers, obviously, for my kids, but they all had 1 or 1.5 inch binder, 3-ring binders. All the teachers wanted them to have binders. And I was like, well, these are kind of like just generic Trapper Keepers. And so maybe it's ironic it's making the comeback.
Yeah, my kids just had the individual notebook. And back in my day, we used brown paper to cover our books.
Yes.
Just a regular
Oh, yeah.
and
Yeah,
we would
we
draw.
do.
Yep. Draw all over them. That is kind of crazy to see the Trapper Keeper making a comeback. But you know what? I've seen bell bottoms, and I've started to see 80s that style of like what's the socks that they wear over like the warm up socks on the outside.
Oh yeah,
And I'm like,
the ones that look like what the ballet girls used to wear.
Yes.
and I'm like, that's making a comeback. Oh my god! Hey, you know what, Walt? Pretty soon the mullet's going to come back. Too bad you can't do it, but I can. I don't think I will. But
and leg warmers.
leg warmers. That's it.
Yep.
All right. Well, I've got one here. You can tell we're living in a different kind of world when we have scientists trying to figure out what's happening with the trout. And I say that because the headline of this story is Junkie P is turning trout into meth heads.
Do you mind telling me what this is all about, mister?
Oh, gosh.
What?
According to this, substance abuse is a uniquely human problem. Sure, you sometimes hear about birds getting drunk by accidentally eating fermented berries or monkeys stealing pot brownies, but animals don't generally seek out drugs to get high. Unless you're a Central European fish. Then you'll like your water laced with a healthy dose of meth. A new study published in the Journal of Experimental Biology has found that the trout can become addicted to methamphetamine.
Holy cow.
And they don't need to get their fix from seedy dealers behind a gas station. They're literally swimming around in their drug of choice. Why? Because according to this study from the Czech University of Life Sciences in Prague, so many people are either peeing down the drain or throwing their drugs down the drain, it's getting in the water supply, and they have found that fish are actually swimming toward water that will get them high.
Wow.
Oh, boy.
A study done showed that they actually do have a preference for drugs. Now, I'm not going to go into all the details, but a lot of this has to do with the fact that so many people now, with the advent of people taking drugs, using drugs, whether illicit or whether explicitly, illicitly, or whatever, so much of it is going into our water system, and it is a problem because if fish are getting high, what is that doing to them, to their biology, to their desire to lead a normal life? But it was an interesting study here that these fish, these particular trout, actually seek water that now has been laced with methamphetamine traces.
It's no bullshit.
Oh my gosh.
Yep, that's not a good thing.
Hey, man, there's a hook there. What do you want to do? You go get it, man. Okay. We're going to have like a cartoon, like the Cheech and Chong of fish.
Yeah, well, I wonder if that transfers over when people catch and eat them.
I doubt it, but it does. It is interesting to show that it doesn't just immediately dissolve and go away just because you flush it down the drain or think by going to the bathroom normally that it's going somewhere to be processed. A lot of that methamphetamine can get into the water sources and affect wildlife. Isn't that crazy?
Yes. And yeah, people should not flush their unused pills.
Any medication.
No.
You know, that is actually that is a great point. I know here in at least in my neck of the woods, but I think it's all of Georgia, every one of your police stations is usually a place that if you want, you can, or fire departments, you can bring your unused medications. Don't pour them down the drain. Take them for proper disposal. They actually will burn the medications to make sure that those medications don't get into the water table.
All right. Well, this one's out of New Orleans. Eye-popping 6,000 false lashes seized at New Orleans airport.
What?
Exactly. From the AP, 3,000 pairs of false eyelashes have been seized by the U.S. Customs and Border Protection agents after officials determined they were illegally imported from China to New Orleans. The 4 boxes of long lashes seized Tuesday at Louis Armstrong New Orleans International Airport was destined for a local beauty supply store, agency spokesperson Matthew Diamond said in a statement. They hadn't been approved by the FDA and weren't labeled with the distributor's name or the manufacturer's name, he said.
Oops.
Well, here's where it gets bad. I didn't really think about this. That means there's no way to tell whether the eyelashes have been exposed to disease during manufacturing or whether they were stored properly and kept away from infested areas. Diamond told the New Orleans Advocate, there's no telling what's on these eyelashes. False eyelashes can be made of synthetics and are attached using adhesives, and unregulated or dangerous material could lead to allergic reactions, eye irritations, or worse. No business or individual has been cited, the newspaper reported. Unlabeled, non-FDA approved false lashes are often seized in New Orleans, but officials said the shipment was particularly large, WVEU-TV reported.
It's no bullshit.
Can I tell you, you're educating me? I had no idea that there was an underground market for false eyelashes. I would have never thought that. Of all the things being, like trucked in under the wire, the black market economy, I never would have thought fake eyelashes would be part of it.
Yeah, I actually worked a counterfeit contact lens case a few years ago.
Oh.
And that was really nasty. But I mean, this sounds just as bad. I mean, they're storing it in areas with rat and bug infestations, and people are putting it
that
in
makes
eyes.
me cringe, actually.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I used to wear fake lashes for work every day. The makeup artist put fake lashes on me every day, but we bought the good ones.
I was going to say, I bet yours were FDA approved.
They were FDA approved. I bought them from the correct place, and because there's even some makeup we couldn't use. I have an allergy to red dye, and some makeup can cause your eyelids to just swell up, and it's just a mess. So folks need to be careful with what their faces.
Public service announcement. If you've got an unmarked thing that says made in China, maybe you should pay for a few dollars more to get the better eyelashes.
Yeah, I would highly recommend that.
I mean, an eye infection is not something to mess with. I mean, you only have 2 of them, and you got to take care of them.
Indeed.
All right. I've got the last one, and I think, Walt, we're going to end on a high note.
I hate to even think of what this means.
I can't decide if the woman in the story is incredibly stupid or just has a ridiculous level of confidence.
Oh, boy.
Now, look, despite the issues we have with maybe fast food, they do come in handy, right? I mean, you can just pull in anytime you're hungry and get in line and grab something to eat. There's all kind of selections and all kind of different restaurants. Now, one might suggest that you shouldn't stop to order a burger if, let's say, you're being in the middle of a high-speed police chase.
Oh, I disagree.
But that's exactly what one Massachusetts woman did.
Never give up, never surrender.
Despite the cops being hot on her trail, the woman decided, I really got to get a Big Mac, and pulled into her local McDonald's. Now, before it just goes into the ridiculous, let me set the stage. Okay. Because if it wasn't already
into the ridiculous.
Right. According to the Worcester, Massachusetts Police Department, this bizarre chase actually started at 8:45 in the morning, July the 6th, when a man called 911 to report a crime. The man told police that the female involved, later identified as Joanna Gardell, age 38, had stolen a company pickup truck that he'd been driving. Apparently, he went inside to a gas station, she jumped in, took his car, ran with it. So, the cops start chasing her because there was a GPS in the truck. Well, she starts going through red light after red light after red light, and the cop says, I'm going to pull back. I'm going to stop with a hot pursuit. It gave her confidence to believe that she was getting away with it. And that's when another police group started to follow her and was in hot pursuit. She ends up playing smash-up derby with two different police officers and gets away with now a busted-up truck. So I guess she's been working up a good hunger at this point. They let her get away, knowing they're still tracking her on GPS. She doesn't know that. She can't explain why they're constantly finding her, but they are. She decides, you know what? I've had enough. I can't see any other cops in sight. I've gotten away from two different groups of people. I've rammed my way. And oh, by the way, when she rammed her way through one of the officers was trying to grab her car door because she had slowed down, and she actually dragged him, could have run him over. Thankfully, he's okay. But she decided to go to a nearby McDonald's. Maybe she wanted to celebrate. Maybe she thought, woohoo, I got away with it. Unfortunately for her, she was pretty much now trapped in the drive-through lane. More cops showed up, blocking her escape from being able to leave. She then intentionally rammed another one of the police cruisers, trying to get away and driving off-road, but the truck was already too badly damaged to make it over the mulch. She got caught in there and ended up being taken into custody. Gardell has been charged with a hilarious list of offenses, including a total of 13. Her crimes include, but are not limited to, failure to stop for police, red light violation, assault and battery by means of a dangerous weapon, the car or the truck, disturbing the peace, and operating a motor vehicle after suspension. And yeah, she did not have a license.
It's amazing. It's astounding. But it's no bullshit.
So folks, just a tip. If you're going to go in a hot pursuit, you are in hot pursuit. Do not stop at the McDonald's for a bite. They can catch you there.
What a genius.
Caught by her desire for a Big Mac.
And a Big Mac of all things.
Uh-huh. Well, you know, when you got to have a Big Mac, where else are you going to get that special sauce? You know, 2 all beef patties, lettuce sauce.
People are amazing.
They
my
are.
gosh.
And
yes,
we
are.
we thank the stupid for being caught so we can talk about them. So anyway.
That is right. And so they can be made fun of.
We'll move to our last segment. This is a chance for Karen to weigh in as well because it's our entertainment segment. And this is where we talk about what we've been watching, what we've been reading, and what we've been listening to. Maybe give our audience something to try out for the first time. And we won't put our guest on the spot just yet. We'll go to Walt once again first thing. Walt, what have you been watching?
Well, I found a really interesting show on Hulu this week, and I'm in the middle of episode 2. It's called Life After People. And I read the book that this is based on a few years ago, and it basically is, if every human disappeared from the earth today, here's how the planet would react to it.
Oh, okay.
And it is really fascinating. It's, you know, it talks about water intrusion and all this stuff and the buildings collapsing. And, you know, in 10 days, this is where we'd be. In 15 years, this is where we'd be. And it marches through. So it is really a very cool apocalyptic look at what would happen if we were gone. And the episode that I'm just starting or working on now is talking about Atlanta, Los Angeles, and Chicago, I believe, are the 3 cities. So it is a really fascinating show. And the book, like I said, was really fascinating as well. But it just talks about like the bridges, what would when each one would fall, and how animal life would take over, and it really is just an incredibly cool show. So Life After People, that's on Hulu. I made the mistake. I do this about every 2 or 3 years of saying I'm just going to watch 1 or 2 episodes of Arrested Development. And then I'm off and running. I just finished season 1. So I basically binged that this week. And then a show that you had recommended, actually, Alan, I've started in on that, and I've watched the first episode, and I know I'm going to get hooked on it. It's called The Queen's Gambit.
Oh my God, that is a great limited series thing on Netflix. It's like 7 episodes. It's like a mini movie. It's just really long. It's fantastic.
Great, yeah.
Yeah, totally different from what I was expecting, but really, really interesting so far.
That first episode is sort of like its own movie. It's a little bit longer than the other episodes, but if you were really hooked after the first episode, keep watching. It only gets better and better. There are scenes, I swear, they're taking from Steven Soderbergh's style of directing from like Ocean's 11, where the camera will be on her, moving from one set piece to another, one tracking continuous shot. It's stunning. When she gets older and her outfits, and she's moving through the 70s, moving into the 80s, it's amazing. It's one of the best limited series I've seen.
Well, there were a couple times in this first episode where I had to stop and rewind just to make sure I got what was going on. I mean, it really is a great show so far.
Karen, have you seen it?
I have not. My daughter has watched it. She said it's great, so it's on my list.
I would heartily recommend it, especially since you've got daughters. We all have daughters, because she is a chess phenom, but doesn't know anything about chess, doesn't even realize she's got a chess brain. She's just a quirky, odd kid that it ends up in an orphanage, and I won't spoil anything, but it is stunning to watch her grow up, and they do such a great job. It's amazing.
It's on my list, and so I will definitely get to it.
And as I had said when I watched it, you don't even have to know chess. I mean, it's fine if you do. It doesn't matter. You're going to feel as if you're watching. It doesn't matter what the sport is. You're on the edge of your seat with watching this competition and understanding it's a psychological human story that chess just happens to be the vehicle in which they're telling the story.
Yeah, it's really cool, and I'll give more of an update next week when I get a little bit further into it.
Okay, what else?
Well, those are my big 3. So
okay,
and of course, Arrested Development kind of takes over everything. So
well, and Karen can identify with this. My wife's father-in-law has been visiting us for the last couple of months. After about 4 years ago, when his wife died, we've been making a point of making him come down for a couple of months, usually during the holidays, but he couldn't come down last holiday, so he came this spring after he got his vaccination. So we spend almost every evening watching something. I will cut my list down to the ones that I love, these movies that we've watched in the last week or so. We dove back into watching A Fish Called Wanda. I don't know if you've ever seen that. John Cleese written. Michael Palin's in that, and Kevin Kline won an Academy Award. Jamie Lee Curtis. Great, funny movie. My father-in-law laughed, had never seen it before. Which got us into a Kevin Kline phase, and we decided to rewatch the movie Dave. Did you ever see that?
Oh, yes.
Where he looks like the president, and so they bring him in as a stand-in, and then the president has a stroke, and they hide that fact to try to make him act like he's still the president. Sigourney Weaver playing the first lady. Great feel-good movie.
Yeah, that was a really good one. I remember that one.
Well worth rewatching if you haven't seen it in a while. And then I had a chance to my father-in-law, who's a big Clint Eastwood fan, had never seen Pale Rider.
What?
Yes. I was like, how have you not seen Pale Rider? So we watched it. He loved it. And then at the very end, I was like, did you notice? And I won't spoil it for anybody who's not seen it. I'm like, did you notice what happened at the end of the movie and then back to what you saw on Clint Eastwood earlier? And he goes, oh. And I started explaining. He goes, oh, I would have never noticed that. I'm like, there you go. And so he goes, I need to go watch that again. But Pale Rider, great Western.
Oh, it's fantastic. Just an awesome movie.
And then, for your benefit, Walt, with your connection with the reboots of Star Trek, we introduced him to the reboot of Star Trek 2009, J.J. Abrams. He fell asleep halfway through.
Of course.
But he said the next night, he goes, I feel really bad. I was tired. It wasn't because I didn't like it. I couldn't recognize the characters. I'm like, well, it's because they're all new characters. They're the same people. They're just different actors. But when the second night we watched the second half and Leonard Nimoy does show up, he goes, oh, I know him. I'm like, well, of course you know him. That's the original Spock. So he liked that. And last but not least on the movie side, of all the Harry Potter movies, my favorite is the third one. And my daughter, my youngest, who is living on her own with some friends, she was introducing one of her friends to the Harry Potter movies, and they were on number 3, and they said, can we come over and watch it with you? So we all did a family movie night, and we watched Harry Potter 3, which is The Prisoner of Azkaban, and love that. So those are great movies we've watched, plus a bunch of others that I'll just leave off the table. Let me get to our shows that I've watched. I completely binged in 2 days Bosch Season 7.
Oh, I did too. Yeah.
Loved
I
it.
did too.
I thought it was a little shorter than the other ones, but I like how it ended. I told my wife, because she has not watched it, I said it ended how I wanted it to, knowing there was a spinoff series. Karen, have you ever seen Bosch on Amazon?
Yeah, I started watching it sometime last year, and then I got sidetracked with a whole bunch of other things. I got into some BritBox and some British TV shows, so I didn't finish. But I'll go back and I will finish up.
Bosch was one of my all-time favorite cop drama, like kind of series on television or on Netflix, or not Netflix, but Amazon. I would hardly recommend going back and catch up with that. This final season was delayed a year because of COVID, but really satisfying the way it ended, and looking forward to the spinoff now that will launch hopefully in a year. So you got even more to look forward to.
Well, I knew when he put his application in to be a PI, I was like, nah, it may be 2 or 3 years before they get that back to him and they can start the next season. So
he kind of gave away
the
end
government.
Hey, spoiler alert from Walt.
Yeah, well, I mean, every good cop retires and becomes a PI.
I guess so. I've been watching Loki, and we had the penultimate episode, so we've got one more to go. It's been fantastic. If you're a Marvel Cinematic Universe fan, I really enjoy it. And very quickly, the ones I watch on YouTube, the reaction channels, big shout out to Ashley Burton. In the last 2 weeks, she's reviewed Thor, Casablanca, A League of Their Own, Snatch, and Ferris Bueller's Day Off. That was fun to watch a millennial who's never seen any of those movies watch them and react for the very first time. Similarly, Popcorn in Bed watched Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, Pulp Fiction, Independence Day, and Arrival. Not The Arrival, which came out in 2016 or 2018.
16.
Was really good. And finally, The Daily Doug, who was a guest several weeks back on our show. Always fun to watch a classically trained music composer review metal. It's always fun. All right, I went very long on what I'm watching. Karen, what have you been watching?
Well, in the early days of the pandemic, my best friend out in California, she said, "Have you ever watched Chuck, the TV show Chuck?"
Oh, great show!
I guess it was a CBS show. And so I watched it. I absolutely laughed out loud. That thing was so funny. The actors were so great. I ended up having to go back to the first episode, and I watched the whole series all over again because there's just so much fun in it. It just made me laugh. It made me smile. And when it was over, I was sad because I missed all the characters. But I just thought it was a great show. It's just a lot of fun. It's stupid. It's silly, but it's fun. It really is a lot of fun. So I loved Chuck.
Do you remember what network that was on?
I think it's on Netflix. I think the whole series is on Netflix. It could be on Amazon, though. So it's either Netflix or Amazon.
Okay, I'll look it up. I always try to put that in the show notes. Okay, cool. What else?
Yeah, and it's really, really fun. I enjoyed it. I am into a lot of British things. And, of course, Victoria and The Crown and all of that because I like the British stuff. But the TV shows that I found that I really enjoyed, one was Endeavour. These are kind of British cop shows. Endeavour was very good, and the cop, his name is Endeavour. Mm-hmm. He's really quirky, odd, you might say a little bit. He kind of grows a bit as you go through the seasons, and it has a little bit of some British humor, but I really enjoyed it. The other one is Shetland, which is another cop show. This one was made in Scotland. And so you're out there on the island of Shetland. And so the vision, it's beautiful to look at because the sights and sounds of Scotland are just gorgeous. And it is, it's not really funny, but it's just intriguing. And I enjoyed that one. The other one that was kind of funny, it's another cop show in England. It's called Midsummer Murders. And it's been on for 15, 16, 17 seasons.
Wow.
And as it started with one guy who was the lead, he then retired from the series and another guy came in his place, which they made him into his cousin as he took over. The other guy retires and the new one takes over. And I just found that all the townspeople and how they interacted with each other, it was funny, and I would laugh at times. And even though people had died, and you have to figure out who's the murderer, and so that was always a lot of fun. And one thing I'm waiting to come back for is Outlander, and I don't know if you've ever heard of that. Outlander, or it's another English Scottish kind of thing, and it's intriguing, and the next season is coming out pretty soon, so I'm excited for that one to return.
Since you like a lot of the British cop shows, let me, if you haven't seen it, let me recommend Broadchurch with David Tennant.
Broadchurch is great.
Okay.
Is
it a show or a movie?
It's a series. It was 2 seasons on British. I think I watched it on Amazon, but it was definitely a British produced show. And David Tennant, if you know him, he was one of the Doctor Who's for a while. He's a really, really gifted actor. And he plays a guy who, the backstory is not giving anything away, lost a child in a child murder investigation and now is investigating another child murder. And they're like, why are we trusting it to this guy? And it's phenomenal. It's so good. That's so real. It just feels like you're not watching a cop show. It feels like you're watching actual cops doing cop work.
Oh, that's cool. There's another thing that I watched, and it's not very many shows, and it's a true story. I think it's called The Island of Corfu, and it's about this family that ends up from England going to Greece to live for a while. Just all the things that come about in their life after this woman's husband dies and she's got the kids and all the various things they go through. And I just found it delightful. And then it's based on a true story. And so that one I think was, I'm trying to think if it was on Amazon or Netflix, one of the two, but I really enjoyed it. And it's not that many shows, but it's great.
Excellent. Anything else you've been watching or that you'd recommend to watch again for folks who may be seeing it for the first time?
Well, this is another British show. Shows my heritage. I'm mostly English. Grantchester. Grantchester is about a vicar and all the different things that happen in this very small town. And it was quite enchanting as well. I think it's going to have another season. I don't remember how many there were, but I enjoyed that as well.
Excellent. So. You've given me several to go back and look at because I am a big fan of British humor as well as British these cop shows. Like I said, that's where I got hooked on Broadchurch, and I'm going to go check out these. I know my wife loves The Crown. I've listened to several of those episodes while she was in the room watching it at the same time. Just amazing how you can just get sucked into this world. It just feels like they're not doing anything exciting half the time, and you just get pulled right in.
Oh, there's another one. I've only seen 2. I think there are only 3 episodes in this, and they're long format. They're like an hour and a half long. This is on BritBox, and it's called Zen, Z-E-N. And it's another one. It's kind of dark. I mean, you really have to watch. Everything is shot a lot in the dark and in low light scenes, but there's always some disaster befalling someone somewhere.
Cool. Sounds like I've got some cool stuff to watch, and our listeners can as well. Let's move on as we are running out of time to reading. Walt, what, if anything, this past week can you recommend that you've been reading?
Well, I wish I had more time for reading, but I'm still working my way through the Star Trek. I'm drawing a blank on the title. Hopefully you've got it sitting right there.
Oh, yeah. It's called The 50-Year Mission, The First 25 Years.
Yep, that's it. And I'm slowly getting through that. Great read. I mean, if you're a Star Trek fan, it's definitely worth picking up. And it just gives you the good behind the scenes stuff. So yeah, check that out. That's probably the thing I'm reading the most, but I'm really not getting very far in it.
No, I've been very busy playing not only entertainer, but with my dad, my father-in-law visiting. We've been doing a lot of doctor's visits, getting him up to speed before he goes back up to upstate New York. And ironically, because you accidentally ordered 2 of the books and gave me one of them, I'm reading the exact same book as you. So that's what I'm reading.
You're probably a little further than I am, but it is a good book.
I read too much news. Some days I just go, I'm done reading. I don't want to read anything else. I'm gonna put my phone down. I'm going to bed. Karen, what, if anything, have you been reading? Novels, books, anything?
I have a very bad habit of reading 2 or 3 or 4 books at a time. So I just finished John Meacham's book on the art of power about Thomas Jefferson. I highly recommend it. He is a Pulitzer Prize winner author, and it's all about the life of Thomas Jefferson. And he has interviewed family members. He's gone through all the historical sites. His notes section is huge at the back of the book. So he puts in everything of where his sources were, and I thought it was outstanding. I like a lot historical fiction, and I'm a Ken Follett. I don't know if it's Follett or Follett, but it is Follett is how he spells his last name. And I'm reading one series. I've got the one that I'm in the second of a trilogy right now. I'm reading Winter of the World. I read his Fall of Giants, and then the third one of the trilogy is Edge of Eternity. This is about World War II. The first one of that series was World War I. And then the next books of his will be, there are 4 books. One's Pillars of the Earth, World Without End, and A Call of Fire. I'll be reading those. And I also have the book by Ron Chernow, Grant, about Ulysses S. Grant, that I'll be reading. And then I do a lot of books that are religious in extent. The Book of Signs is one, if anybody is interested in the Book of Revelations and what it means, just kind of go through that. But there's also one that I picked up. I heard a couple of political folks talking about this book called The Splendid and the Vile. It's by Eric Larson, 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 Eric Larson, and it's the saga of Churchill, family, and defiance during the Blitz.
Wow.
And I've heard that it's really good. I've heard several well-known political people across the spectrum say that it's a very good book. So I'm looking forward to reading that.
Excellent. You've given us some good stuff to dive into. All right, we're wrapping up. We've got one more subcategory of entertainment. What are you listening to? And Walt, we'll go once again to you first. What's either playing music-wise, podcast-wise, entertainment-wise? What are you listening to?
Well, I am. I'm still listening each week to this podcast called Camp Hell, Anna Wakey, and man, it is just. It is really.
It's riveting, but it's gripping because you know it's real.
Yeah, and I actually knew people who went to Anna Wakey as patients, and it is really messed up. I mean, the people who ran that camp just should be under the jail. I mean, it is just so bad, and they do a great job of exposing what happened there, but also getting into a little bit of how it was covered up and why. And so you do get a little bit of a sense of this not just being you driving by a car wreck, but the producers really trying to reach out and help the people who experience this nightmare, but also help people to understand how to prevent something like this from happening again. So if you haven't listened to it, Camp Hell, Anna Wakey, just is a fantastic thing. And I actually think they pull from the WSB News archives on some of the stories on it. So that's kind of interesting. On a lighter note, Pete Davis, who we hope to have as a guest in a couple of weeks, he has a great sports podcast called Holy Crap, It's Sports. And that man may be the most knowledgeable sports person you'll ever hear. He knows so much about everything going on. Of course, he's a big baseball guy, big SEC sports guy, ACC sports. He's written books on all kinds of different football and sports topics. So Holy Crap, It's Sports with Pete Davis. one of the funniest and informative podcasts out there. And Pete does a great job of just, if something pops up, he gets right on it and gets, and gives some great commentary on it. So
cool.
Check that out. It's a lot of fun.
All right. I'll move very quickly through what I've been listening to. This week's been a little tighter. I do stream almost nightly, either the 2002 album we mentioned before. We had them on as our last as one of our guests. Their album Hummingbird, but they're a new age group. I will just say, hey, Alexa, play music by the group 2002. Because if you say play music of 2002, it'll start playing the hits of 2002.
I made that mistake.
You got to say, play the music of the group 2002. And I'll let that stream for hours. It's great. It's just that new age, very easy to listen to, very relaxing, very calming. I'll even sometimes leave it on because the dogs, it'll mask like noises outside to keep them from barking. Just fantastic music. Podcast-wise, Measure the Score. They just had a new one come out on Hans Zimmer's score for Inception, which I love Hans Zimmer, and I love the movie Inception, so it was fun to hear them break that down and analyze it. The 60MW podcast, they just did a review of the movie Condor Man with their spotlight reflection. This is where two guys look back at movies when they were kids, and now they go back and rewatch them as adults and go, we loved them as 12-year-olds. Do they still work when we're 40 or 50, right? And so that was fun. And then Radio Labyrinth, our friends Tim Andrews and Stephanie Swain. Of course, we just had just with us Jeff Lieboff a few episodes back, and Dustin Lawler, who we're still hoping to have. Great cultural Gen X style podcast. Not safe for work, but part of the fun of listening is it's not safe for work. So check out Radio Labyrinth.
Yeah, I love that podcast. I try to listen every week.
All right, Karen, you get the last word. What are you listening to?
Well, I really am not listening to anything right now. I've just been more reading, things like that. But I can tell you one thing, after today's experience, I will be looking for the podcast of The Wilder Ride.
Oh, good. Nicely said. Great. Your check's in the mail.
Well, we have had some fun guests, so there are some fun older episodes to listen to.
Yeah, the seasons 3 and 4, because of the COVID, we decided to become more talk show oriented. The first 2, we break a movie down. We're going to try to get back into a movie here pretty soon. We're going to be doing 2 shows at the same time. But there's a lot of great guests. If you go to the website, you'll be able to look at the bios, and you don't have to look at them in any order. You can listen to them in any order you want.
Great.
And I don't know if I mentioned this or not, but our past guest, Ryan Waters, had climbed Mount Everest 5 times when he came on. He just completed a 6th climb.
That's amazing.
If you want to go back and listen to that episode from last season, and then also our good friend Shane Kimbrough who was on last season as well, is the current commander of the International Space Station. So
no way.
Yeah. Check out his interview, and then also check out his Instagram, which is astro_Kimbrough. He is posting some of the most amazing pictures of Earth
from the ISS.
From the ISS. And
that's amazing.
Every day, that is one of the things I check. So check his Instagram out. It is absolutely fantastic.
I will check that out.
As we begin to wrap this up, Karen, it has been such a pleasure for you to be with us, for us to have you with us this evening. I got to get my words correctly. Let me try that again. I'm going to edit.
It has been wonderful for you to be here.
It has been so awesome for you to listen to me for the last 2 hours. You should consider yourself privileged.
Welcome to Alan's Narcissism Hour. This is
Alan's mirror and how he loves himself every day. Now, let's try that again. Sorry.
No, you got it.
No, I didn't. No, that's the ironic part. No. Karen, it's been awesome having you with us this evening. I am so happy we were able to get into your schedule and have you join us because, you are such an amazing person, and I just count myself lucky to have crossed your path. I said that earlier, and I really mean that.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor to be on your show, a lot of fun, and such a pleasure to have known you all these years. And it's just, every time we have an opportunity for a conversation, it's always lots of fun. And I just appreciate you even offering to have me on your show. And I really appreciate knowing both
absolutely
of you.
Absolutely our honor to have you. It's been awesome.
Walt, it's a pleasure to meet you. And
you
one
too,
day
Karen.
perhaps we'll meet in person. Thank you. Thank you.
For the folks listening, maybe they've known you, they've watched you, or maybe they're just listening for the first time saying, I'd love to learn a little bit more. Or maybe I've got a daughter or a son who's thinking about meteorology or broadcast. Do you engage at all? Do you release any social media? Is there any way for people to reach out to you?
I do have my professional Facebook page, and I am on Twitter. I don't go on my Facebook page all that much, but if anybody is on Twitter, they can easily follow me on Twitter. It's just my name, Karen Minton, WSB, and they can find me there. It's just my name, Karen, at Karen Minton, WSB, and they can just go right on there, and however you contact people on there, send a message to me, not private, but just, post something and I'll say, hey, and I would be more than happy to talk back and forth with them about, what's going on with their children and give them information that they might need to put them in the right direction and talk to the right people.
That's awesome. Walt, I go to you now. Folks that might be listening to us for the very first time because they were like, wait, Karen Minton was on the podcast? What is this all about? They're just now discovering two knuckleheads. How do they learn more about us?
Yeah. Well, Karen definitely did bring our show up a few notches.
Pole vaulted.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but you can find out everything you want to ever know about us and a lot more at our website at thewilderride.com. And also, you will definitely want to go over to facebook.com/thewilderride. Follow us there, and then a button's going to pop up that says join our listeners group. Hit that button, answer 3 questions just so we know that you're not some weird Russian robot or something. And you can join the group, and we talk about everything from the entertainment world and what's going on there, what's going on our show. No politics, no nonsense like that. Just fun and entertainment. So it's kind of a break from the real world. So you want to check that out. Also, each week we have a poll up, as Alan mentioned, of what movie I'm going to be subjected to that week. So it's a good opportunity to hear about 3 terrible movies that I might have to review. So check that out and vote away. Hopefully we do better next week. And so that's the best way to find us.
As we wrap up, speaking of voting, if you want to help us out with Podcast Magazine's month-to-month poll, they take a daily vote. If you take a second and go to podcastmagazine.com/Hot50, they publish every month the Hot 50 podcast based on listener feedback. It's a popularity contest based on listeners. So the more you guys out there take a second and go visit, if you can do it daily, that's awesome. Whenever you think about it, it'd be awesome. We were the number 4 in the Hot 50 this last month, and we really appreciate all of you out there. Also, take a second to rate and review on whatever podcatcher you're listening to, if it does have that option, or at the very least, hit that share button, share the episode on social media so people can learn a little bit more about us thanks to you listening to us. Karen, once again, before we tease who's coming next week, thank you again so much for being here on The Wilder Ride.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Karen.
And actually, this is going to be fun for me because I think we've got a hold off. We think we know someone's... Oh, no, we do have it. We got it locked in. We have got Stephanie Stuckey joining us tomorrow. If that last name sounds a little familiar, heir to the Stuckey's family, the restaurants, the truck stops,
It's kind of this, the stop along the highway that you always made on your family vacations to get the best in pecan logs and peanut brittle and all that fun stuff. We'd always get in arguments over what games we were going to get or whatever. So, if you grew up in the South, Southeast particularly, or traveled to Florida ever, you would be familiar with Stuckey's. So she is kind of renewing the brand and putting out some of those great treats and everything. So she's going to come on and talk to us a little bit about that.
So to check out that interview, learn a little bit more about where is Stuckey's today, you're going to have to come back next week for another brand new episode of The Wilder Ride Listener's Lounge. Karen, thank you for hanging out for 2+ hours. You are a glutton for punishment, and we appreciate it.
You really are.
It was a lot of fun. It was really a lot of fun. I can't thank you enough. I'm not a radio person, so I don't really do this kind of thing. And very serious weather person. That's, in meteorology, we're always very serious. And so you've gotten me out of my comfort zone a little bit, and that's good.
Hit the dance floor, you gotta be jumping jack. Jump on in, jump in. You hit the dance floor, you gotta be jumping jack.